screen. Okay, so I hope you can all see my screen. So just to go through the things very quickly, your assignment must be submitted through Turnitin. So it is very important that you submit it as a PDF or as a Word document. Okay, it must be typed, an individual assignment, you know all of that. Okay, so this quote is setting up your task. So it's talking about poetry being a defunct genre. So it's being condensed, dense, and sometimes complex genres have lost its position of prominence in English classrooms. So we obviously don't agree with that. Now, in reference to the excerpt above, discuss multimodality and its relevance in teaching poetry in a grade 11 poetry diverse classroom. Now, this is very, very important. How you want to approach this is, I want to see your understanding. So you cannot rely too heavily on source material or any generated content. There should be no generated content whatsoever. What I need to see is that you understand multimodality. So you can use a source as a point of reference, but the discussion needs to be yours. If you just say, these are the different types of multimodality, you can teach it to grade 11 poetry, you can put a picture up to show them an image. Okay, that's going to be correct. However, if you want exceeds the required standards, you have to go beyond just correct. What I need to see is your own understanding and your own voice coming through. So it mustn't read robotically. I need to see that you've understood the theory of multimodality. I need to see you can connect the basic theory of multimodality to the practice of teaching poetry. And I need to see that you've considered the fact it's a grade 11 class and that the class is poetry diverse. We've spoken a lot about the different types of diversity. In this case, the learners that are learning poetry, the ability to decipher poetry, etc., is diverse. So I need to see not that you can research, but that you can show your understanding and apply your understanding to this very specific situation. I want to reassure you that you have the ability to do it. I have heard you people speaking. I have seen your abilities. Where there is a bit of a disconnect seems to be in the direction in which the effort is going. So you don't want to put hours and huge amounts of effort into researching. You know the basics. What you are doing is you are just looking up some specific terminology to show, okay, I've done the research, I've gotten the specific terminologies correct, but you know about multimodality. You know about the advantages of using it to teach poetry. You can think of ideas, brainstorm ideas. That is what is going to get you the marks. Okay, so I hope that is making sense. So then outline 5 multimodal strategies that could help you as a teacher to make poetry enjoyable and applicable in diverse settings. in your response, take into consideration the learning preferences of the different learners in your FET classroom. So I need 5 specific multimodal strategies. So if you want to look up something, you can look up multimodal strategies. Anything you look up must be referenced correctly. So you can look up those strategies. But I need to see you explaining them. So what do you understand about them? So you have the paraphrasing, but then you put it into your own words. And then you are looking, and how you apply that theory is a discussion on how these strategies can make poetry enjoyable, and you need to show how this strategy can be applied in diverse settings. So, high resource schools, low resource schools, classes that have a very strong poetry ability, mixed ability classes, classes that have a fairly low ability in poetry. So where you are going to get your marks is your understanding of the multimodal strategies, your ability to apply that understanding specifically to teaching poetry and making it enjoyable, applying it in diverse settings, and I need to see that you've taken into consideration the learning preferences of the different learners. And I'll give you a hint. We've discussed this before, and I know you all know this, that multimodality is incredibly closely linked to the different learning preferences, because visual learners are going to want a visual mode. Okay, so that is where you are going to take these questions or your answers. Now, this is quite an interesting one because it is a cartoon. However, we are talking about it as a form of literature. Okay, a multimodal lesson for grade 11 learners. So you have to use this cartoon. Okay, and you have to make sure that you are comfortable with the cartoon. I know you all understand it. Choose one of the teaching approaches to literature. So very important, not just a teaching approach to English. Must be very specifically a teaching approach to literature. Okay, we've done the 4 main ones. If you find another approach that is specific to literature, you can use it. Once again, you give your paraphrasing from your source, you explain it, explain your understanding. So discuss the approach and justify why this approach is suitable to use in teaching with this visual text. Okay, so where I really want to see that knowledge coming through is how do you take that approach and apply it specifically over here, and then provide practical examples. So I am looking for very, very specific things. So you need to tell me, you don't just say, I will ask questions on the themes. Give me the examples of a question that you would ask. Don't say, I would ask them to draw a cartoon. Tell me what the instruction is going to be. Okay. The lesson conclusion is often incorrectly viewed as the point in the lesson for learners to provide responses to an activity and for the teacher to give homework and instructions to pack up for break. Explain the importance and purpose of a lesson conclusion. So once again, yes, you can do some looking up and you find a reference. However, if you are only providing what someone else says about a conclusion, I cannot give you more than the very basic meets the required standards because your answer isn't correct. However, I cannot say with certainty that you've understood the concept. So I can't give your understanding credit. Now, if you have a reference after every sentence, you're not demonstrating your own abilities, which I know you have. And I know you have fantastic ideas. That's what I want to see coming through. I want to see a real enthusiasm for your own ideas and your own understanding. You should never be afraid of that. You will almost always get more credit for that than, just providing what the textbook says. Now, this is really your chance to shine. Now, I need to see that you have taken time to think about it. And once again, I don't want you to feel scared of diving in and doing it by yourself. I know that you guys have the ability to put together a really great slideshow. I want you to look at your final product. Is it pleasant to look at? If the answer is yes, then it's good. If you're looking at it and going, you know what? I wouldn't be excited to use this in my teaching prac, then go back. If you are not excited about it, it's very difficult for other people to be excited about it. So I really want you guys to consider, can I take this PowerPoint presentation? Can I use it in real life? That's really where we want to be going with these things. Okay, I see the hands and I'm going to come to you in a moment. What I'm looking for is, can you really look at this and go, this is something that I'm going to keep, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to use it for years to come. That's the standard by which you should be judging your work. Yes, Tiffany, you've got your hand up.
Hi, I actually struggled a bit with a presentation that we had to make for one of our other assignments, in the sense that the second degree that I did was in creative brand communication, and there they taught us that, like, good, clean presentation with very little text on it is the best way to, present something to people. And I've taken that into a lot of my teaching already. But during my assignment, the part that I was struggling with was, well, it's an assignment and you can't see that I'm going to be presenting these points. So for the sake of the presentation in the assignment, should I add more text to it or keep it to what I know and have learned?
So that's actually an excellent point.
Thank you.
Now, yes, in general, the standard is keep it very clean, very little text. With teaching, you've got to balance that with the practicalities. Now, you are not going to type up your entire lecture, your entire lesson. Sorry, you don't lecture. You're not going to put all of the information onto the slide. However, what you really want to consider is that a lot of the learners are, their learning preference is reading and writing. So for quite a few of them, they actually need to see the information written down. So you would perhaps say, if we are looking at the information to support learners with interpreting cartoons, you would say visuals, and then you might bullet point what to look for in the visuals, but for each bullet point, you want to make a little note, give an example. So you're not writing in like full sentences, you're not writing paragraphs, but it should be enough that the learners look at the slide and are able to grasp what they need to know from the written text.
Okay, so just enough for the visual learners, but also not like an overwhelming amount. Thank you.
Exactly. It is a
Thank you.
balancing act, but you'll know when you look at it, it'll start to make a lot more sense.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay, Matthew.
Hi, Amy. I just wanted
Hi.
to, I'm a bit concerned about this one. So,
Mm.
I mean, in the same way that students are, they have like learning preferences, we have learning preferences, right? We're people.
Yes.
For me, I'm much more of a word person, particularly with presentations. So my thing is when if I'm thinking of like a presentation that's effective to me, that might be not entirely word-based. So I'm not saying walls of text, but that's kind of what I go for. And I don't normally, I often find too many images or images that aren't specifically helpful. I find them quite distracting, so I kind of steer away from them. So what I'm saying is that like in marking this, is there like, can we just follow our own approaches, or is that going to impede us when it comes to marks? Because actually that's not seen as creative or effective or whatever. Because then, I mean, the markers are also going to have their own preferences. So then they're going to look at it and say, but this isn't what I think a good presentation looks like, even though actually to me, that's exactly what an effective presentation does. So I'm just wondering, like, how do you balance that in terms of, yeah, like balancing our preferences and what we think it should look like as opposed to like what you're looking for in the actual question.
Okay, once again, that is a very good point. So we all do have our preferences when we're teaching, when we're designing. So yes, it is perfectly fine to create resources that are more in line with your preferences. So for some of you, there will be more visuals. And for some of you, there might be a bit more text. And that's absolutely fine. Where you are looking is taking a step back. So the way to approach it is probably to design it in a way that feels natural and intuitive to you, and it looks good to you. Then, if you've got the time, and I really hope you do, put it aside and come back the next day and try and look at it and say, would someone else enjoy this presentation? So, as I say, some people are going to have more visuals. There isn't a set number of visuals that you have to have. Some people would like to have a slightly colored background, and that's fine. What you need to do is you need to make sure the background is not bright, because that's not good for a visual design. Some people much prefer a white background, and that's absolutely fine, because both slightly colored and completely white are visually effective. Some people will prefer to have bold and bullet points. That can be very effective. Somebody else might prefer to set out the writing as a sort of spider diagram setting. That's also very effective. So I know this might not seem to be the most helpful response, that there is not one right way to do it. for you, for example, you said you like text. So you will probably put more writing in. You just need to look at it and say, is the amount of writing on this page overwhelming? If you look at it and you say, you know what? No. I believe that a grade 11 learner will be able to look at that and not feel overwhelmed. That is fine. So an example of that would be if we look at this page right in front of you, there is a lot of text on it. I would not say that it is overwhelming. So some people, for example, would look at this and go, okay, it's too much. I want to streamline the presentation. I want to take it out, and I'm going to put fewer words on. And that can look really good. If you look at it and go, okay, there's a lot of writing, so I'm going to keep it to a clean visual. So I'm going to put just a little bit of visual adornment here. That works too. So it is a case of using common sense, if I can put it that way, and not stressing too much about, is it perfect? Rather looking at it and going, does this look good? I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Jacqueline?
So my question is around the use of your URL for the quiz that has to go into the PowerPoint. In your videos, you say it has to be active and you have to be able to click on it, but we're uploading a PDF.
So you should be able to add a link into a PDF. If you, I don't have it in front of me, but if you go to insert, so
I can do that on PowerPoint and on Word. It
yes,
goes in as a link, but
and
then we've got to save the document as a PDF.
Yes, that link will save across.
Okay.
And I am aware sometimes the links do break or they expire. I know that happens, so I'm not going to be a jerk about it. But I have to see that you have included the link and you have to have those screenshots. And I have to be able to read the screenshots. So it's a case of covering all your bases there. Okay, Yolandi?
Just a note, so because I can't take the PDF and place it into my Word document and then PDF it again. So would it be okay if, as an example, I put the screenshot of that slide on the Word document, but then just underneath that, place the actual link again, so it's clickable?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So the other thing I really need to emphasize is you must please make sure that you have covered all the information. So you must be a title page. Information to support learners with interpreting cartoons. That means you've got a slide where you have the learning material, what they need to know in order to interpret a cartoon. And there must be enough information that, let's say, a student who was absent that day would be able to look at the PowerPoint and still get the idea and be able to use that information. A copy of the cartoon. Now, this is where we start getting to the very high end of the marks. I need to see that you considered how and where to place the cartoon. is there a lead-in to the cartoon? Or, you know, is it just sort of shoehorned into the middle of a PowerPoint? That's where you start to elevate your work. Pair work introductory activity. So it must be pair work. It must be an introductory activity. And there again, we're looking for something that is pair work, but it does what an introductory activity needs to do. So that's activate prior knowledge, hook the learners, be clearly linked to what is coming next. And on that note, I just need to really emphasize those LOs must be very specific. So it's not just use techniques of visual literacy to interpret a cartoon. You need to specify what are those techniques. Okay, so you start with what CAP says and then you specify. So the learners need to be able to read those LOs. And by the end of the lesson, go, yes, I can do that exactly. If they're too general, the learner doesn't know, and it's also very difficult for us to assess if the learner has actually achieved those learning outcomes. And then the post-reading activity. So we're looking for scaffolding. We're looking for interest. We're looking, does it closely align to those LOs? So by the end of the activity, they can do those LOs. And then the conclusion, now we've just had a question on what a conclusion does. So I want to see some of that, well, I want to see that come through for that link. And once again, yes, you can use Kahoot, but I need to see something really interesting coming through for Kahoot. Now, and I did mention this in my video, and I'm just saying it again. There are a lot of things that would be good in a classroom. It's a good activity. Kahoot is a great activity. It's lovely to use in the classroom. But what we're looking for is the standout lesson. So just like with your teaching prac, you're going to have to do your crit lessons. And during your crit lessons is when your supervisor is going to be looking to see what is the best that you can come up with. Okay, it's not going to be a perfect lesson. Please don't put pressure on yourselves to do a perfect lesson. It's never going to be a perfect lesson. No one expects that. No one cares about that. But what the supervisors are looking for is this a fairly run-of-the-mill introduction? If you're doing a run-of-the-mill introduction on a crit lesson, what is your run-of-the-mill lesson then like? So this is your chance to show off and say, I've pulled out the stops for this. So just the reason why I'm really sort of emphasizing this is what this course is designed to do is to make you a fantastic English teacher. And all of this stuff should be stuff that you can use in the classroom. Much as this is a very important course in and of itself, and you developing your critical thinking skills and your academic skills, way more important is I want you to be able in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, to be using the principles, the ideas, the activities that you've developed during this course. So that is why I'm saying, when you are designing these things, don't think, well, it's not going to work in real life because I can't do this for every lesson. No, you can't do that for every lesson. And I don't want you to go into a classroom thinking, oh, yeah, well, I remember they said Kahoot isn't a great thing to use. It's a great thing to use. But is it your standout? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for something that you really put time into and you've really thought about, which, as I say, you can't do for every single lesson, but you can pull out when you need a really great lesson. So I hope that clarifies some ideas for you and puts you on the right path there. Once again, 10 to 12 questions, variety of question types, scaffolding, fun and healthy competition. LOs are assessed. So just make sure you've gone through that tick box. Okay. Then question 3. So this is the infographic. Now, I'm going to pause here for the generative content talk. Please make sure you've gone through the IIE's guidelines for using AI. I personally would strongly recommend just not using AI at all. It is using AI is an important skill, and it's one that needs to be developed and practiced, but these assignments are not the time to really practice with AI. First of all, it's not going to help you in your own growth and development if you're just feeding prompts into AI and it's spitting things out. That you really want to think about what you want to get out of your educational experiences. But more than that, AI is very difficult to use really, really effectively. By the time you've perfected those prompts and you've reiterated it and reiterated it and reiterated it, you're going to spend twice as long to get something worthwhile out of it as if you had just done it yourself. When it also comes to the wording of things, AI does have a certain robotic tone to it. Now, I know my speaking and my writing can come across as a little bit robotic naturally, so I'm very aware that some people do speak like that. But there are certain things that AI does, and the way it writes, the words it uses, the sentence structure, it just doesn't flow very naturally. By the time you've trained your AI to sound exactly like you, it's, taken 10 times as long as it would have for you to write it. And the same thing for synonym generators. Never, ever, ever use those things. Those things are awful. They take your work down to an extreme degree. They really make your work sound like it was written by a very grumpy, overworked robot who is looking to lose their job. So please never use synonym generators. There is no way your own writing could be worse, I promise you. So when it comes to designing the infographic, I know the temptation might be to try and get an AI to help you with it. Please stay away from that. It's not going to turn out really well. I want you to be excited to do this. I want you to feel this is a chance for me to actually show off a little bit. And once again, the way I want you to approach it, is it good enough? Look at it. Do you like it? Does it make sense to you? Does the layout look good to you? Do the colors look good to you? Does the position of the writing look good to you? When you read the writing, do you feel that you have conveyed enough information without overwhelming them? This is what I am looking for from you guys, is your own take on it. And I'm going to get 48 very, very different infographics, and that's great. They should, each infographic should look different. What I really would hate to see is 30 infographics that look really, really similar, because that doesn't show creativity. That doesn't say to me, when you go into a classroom and you look at what you've got to teach, you can take that material and get excited about it and design resources that you are excited to use and that your students are going to be excited to deal with. So that's really what I'm looking for here. Yes, Matthew.
Hi, Amy. I just
Huh.
wanted to check with the infographic, the kind of graphic component. I know a lot of the other lecturers, when they give examples of infographics and what they can look like, they're often little pictures and stuff, which it's generally because they're using something like Canva or something like a generator, something like that. If we are not using AI, if we're using it, say, if we're trying to like create our own thing using Paint or Microsoft PowerPoint, are we going to get marked down if there aren't really little figures or little graphic illustration things? I mean, can we just have like shapes and colors and those kind of details? Is that sufficient?
So you will need some visuals, so some images. Infographics will always have some, but you don't need to have too many. You can, as long as you've considered the visual aspect, because an infographic needs to use visuals. So shapes, space, colors, that counts as a visual aspect. So that
Okay.
is absolutely fine.
But then a graphic, so I'm actually a bit confused. So if you have shapes and stuff like that, is that sufficient, or would it be ideal if they're little characters or something like that?
So yes, you should add, even if it's
Characters.
just two
And then
images,
can we use those?
like a character.
Can you get those from AI? I don't actually know where you'd get that kind of thing from if you're not a designer yourself.
Oh no, you can use AI. I would imagine it's, unless you've got an AI that really does images really well. So that is how you can use AI, is just to create an image for you. Absolutely fine. That is no different to going onto Canva and scrolling through the pictures they've got there, or going onto Google Images and finding a picture from there. I'm not expecting you to draw your images. So that's absolutely fine. What I don't want is you to take this and then upload it into AI and say, spit something out. It's going to be terrible. It's not going to come across as authentic,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
also
perfect.
it's against the IE guidelines, but saying I want this image, absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
No problem. Tiffany, your hand's up?
Yeah, I feel this might be a bit of a stretch and a bit of a big ask, but would it be okay if I email you one of the sets of slides that I've made and used in my own classes to see if that would be okay? Not to use that exact set of slides, but the way that I've made them, to see if I can continue doing that for this assignment as well, or if I should like rework my methods entirely.
Send it through.
Okay.
I would love to look at it.
Okay.
I am very pushed for time, so
No, that's perfectly. That's why I don't want to impose on anyone. On you.
no, but absolutely. I might not be able to give very detailed feedback, but I can look at it and I can go, okay, and give you my overall impressions. That would be absolutely fine.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. So what I really want you guys to focus on, and I know you might be feeling a bit stressed, going, well, how do I get the answers right? How do I get what she's looking for? What I need to see is that you've understood the work, which I know you have. I need to see that you've thought about how to elevate things. So your introductory activity, think, pair, share. Nice, very, very nice. But what makes it special? What can I see that you've put your own stamp on this? Have you found a way to make it more exciting? And forgive me, I've forgotten who it was, and I don't want to give away trade secrets, but a lovely example of elevating something was one of you, for your question and answers, you wrote the question the way it's sort of asked in an exam or in, the final exams. And then underneath, you put a bit more of an explanation. So identify a metaphor and explain and discuss its effectiveness. So then underneath, part 1 was find a metaphor in the song and write it down. And then next part was say what this metaphor means. I can't remember exactly how you phrased it. It was better than that. But that is an example of, instead of just writing the question, actually going, how can I scaffold this? And then by breaking up that bigger question into smaller chunks, it's a fantastic learning tool, because what that does is it shows them this is what the question is going to look like in the exam, but I've practiced what to actually do. Because that's a huge problem with learners, is they get to an exam and they don't understand what the question is asking. So, you don't need to do something over the top, but you just need to show you've thought about it and that you're excited about this. That's what I'm really looking for. So if I can use an example from the last assignment, with the handout, everyone put the song lyrics in, and that's great. What really elevated some of your handouts for that was you'd actually taken time to put in an area for annotation, or put in notes where the students should annotate. So that's the difference between meets the required standards, you've got the thing there, and exceeds the required standards, because you knew you had to put it in and they had to be able to annotate it. So was it printed out, or was it printed out with the space for annotation? Things like, did you, I know you can't use too much ink, but did you put a border around your handout? Did you have an image, or did you consider a more exciting way to put the words on the page? So it's those things that elevate your work. So it's not complicated things. It's things that show you've looked at these activities and you've thought about, how can I make this the best thing that I can? And I keep coming back to this idea of, are you excited about it? Because that is what elevates your activities and elevates your resources. Is, have you looked at it and are you excited to go and fiddle with it and improve it and make it the best that it can be? That is what is going to elevate your work, and that's where your effort should be going. I hope I've provided some feedback here and some guidance. Do you guys have any questions about this assignment? Yes, Tessa.
Good evening.
Hi.
I just had a question about the infographic. I know
Yes.
that they're typically one page. Would this infographic also just need to be one page?
Let me just double check. It does not specify. So yes, generally they are one page. So your guideline should be one page. Just double check the marking criteria. Question 3 is it doesn't, because it doesn't specify, one page is the general rule. If it's over, you cannot be penalized for that.
Okay, so it's okay if it's 2 pages.
Yes, we haven't specified that it can't be, so that's fine.
Perfect, thank you.
No problem. I did see another hand. Okay, so if you do think of anything else, please feel free to ask. Yes, sorry, I didn't have access to the chat. So, Tiffany, you make such a good point. You don't want your students to be reading the slides instead of paying attention in class. So it is exactly as you say, it's a real balancing act. You want them to have enough information that they can get the information, but you don't want them to read it. So bullet points, lists, short sentences, those are the sort of things that you're looking for. Okay. Now, that did take a bit of time. So what I am going to do is I just want to quickly go over some points on assessments. Now, with assessments, the main thing that you are looking at is what is the purpose of these assessments. So I've got the wrong ones here. If you are looking at a formative assessment, the whole point is guiding the learners. So, for example, this first assignment of yours is a formative assessment. The point is to provide you with feedback. So yes, it is a formal. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's picked up this design. So I just want to show you. For example, this design, not great. It really just is not it's not terrible, but there's nothing exciting about it. You can see that I just used the PowerPoint design feature. Could be worse. You know, it's got some color. That, too much writing. Okay, now I'm allowed to do it because you are postgraduate students. For postgraduate students, it is more accessible. It is more appropriate for you to have more writing. Also, this is a distance module, so you are using the PowerPoints a lot more rather than having me talk through all the PowerPoints. So it does need to have more writing. For a classroom, far, far too much writing. something like that. Even that, you'll see that second point, it's a bit of a paragraph. You'd want to redesign that. Too much of a paragraph, I would say, for a classroom. That, okay, the visual, I don't like what I've done there, but at least you've used some visual elements. Too much writing, once again, do not like that. It is too difficult to read. So I did redo all of these slides for you, so I'm not sure why it's coming up as these ones. My apologies for that. But what I hope you see is that when I say balancing the writing, you can see when it's too much writing. But for the purposes of this lesson, I'm just going to keep these slides up. With your formatives, the whole point is for the learner to see how they're doing and for the teacher to see how they're doing. So they can be formal, so they can be full marks, but it isn't the end point of the education. It is a stopping point. It's a pause to see and to take stock and see what needs to be done. The summative is where feedback is not as important because you aren't going to be able to implement the feedback too much. Not saying the feedback isn't important, because you will use that feedback in the following year or in the following block of education, but it's not going to help you for this course, for example. So with the summative, you really are looking at finding out, have they got enough knowledge to progress to the next stage? So as you can see, your formatives, you have a lot more leeway to use different multimodalities, to use different ways of assessing learners. Now, the practicalities of that are, you want to be creative, you want to give them chances to show their work. The activities that you do in class and even for homework, these should be exciting, they should be innovative, they should get the learners enthusiastic, because this is a chance to consolidate what they've learned in class and to apply those principles, use those ideas, get familiar with them. The balancing act is, you do need to include the sort of activities that mimic what they can expect in a formal assessment. So they have to have practice in reading the sort of questions and answering the sort of questions that they will see in a test. So you don't need to, I know you're all thinking about assignment 2. I am talking about in the real world, in the classroom. So you want to think about, how can I get them to engage with these ideas in a way that they're going to be excited about, and therefore they're actually going to engage with them? And when do I bring in the assessment, the practice for the assessments? So as I mentioned, there was that excellent idea of scaffolding the questions, having the question as it appears in a formal assessment, and then breaking it down underneath. That's a very innovative idea. So when you are doing when you're looking at your assessments, you really want to look at what is the point. Then, of course, knowing the curriculum, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't know what the learners are going to be assessed on and what the learning outcomes are, you can't teach them. It goes without saying. So that's why it's actually really important to have those very specific LOs in your lesson plans. demonstration of competency. So this is where we're starting to look at Bloom's taxonomy. You also want to look at scaffolding at this point, and you want to look at a variety of questions. That's what will show this demonstration of competencies. And then those are the competencies to be assessed and how you look at that. Okay, so those are the two things I really wanted to go over. And at this point, do you have any questions about what I've spoken to you about assessments? Do you have any questions about multimodality or any of the previous sections that we have looked at? And then finally, any questions about the assignment? Yes, Tiffany.
Actually, yes. Sorry, I don't have time to switch over to my headset again. I've got you on loudspeaker the whole time. For the presentation itself, if I do want to add GIFs, I know that I'm going to be sending it as a PDF file, but can I send a link to the Canva file that I'll be using?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Just be a little bit careful with the permissions, and if it expires, just double check that. I've noticed there've been some issues with Canva. Send the link, and then also you can make a note underneath to just say this is a GIF. So sort of covering all the bases.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Matthew?
Hi again. I was just wondering, so you see, this is kind of what my concern was, because I'm looking at these slides and to me, the level of text seems kind of fine, and I don't know how I'm going to like work my way out of my natural preference for these things over the course of a weekend. Is it, I don't know, is there a level of like, I don't know, I don't even know what I'm asking. I foresee a problem essentially. I don't know how, because then there is a lot of content to do with the subject matter in the presentation. So having not bulky points, but at least having a level like some level of text, right? I mean, it seems justifiable to me. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe it's not just this thing that will happen later. Anyway.
I do understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And if I look at this slide, you can actually you could add more text. It's not necessarily the amount of text that is the problem here, because as you say, there is a lot of information to get through. What I don't like is the big, if I can just highlight it here, this big paragraph.
Yeah.
It's fine. It is fine, but it would probably be better to add in, to try and break it up into 2 points. That would make it a little bit more accessible. So if you look at these, like that is a lot of text for quite a small box. It's a bit difficult to read.
Yeah.
So what you would want to do then is, instead of having it in full sentences, break it up into points. So you could still divide the page into 4 and then have 4 blocks, but instead of having a big paragraph, break it up into little points instead.
Yeah. Okay.
And then if you look at this slide, it's very difficult to read.
Yeah, but I mean, is that based on the coloring of the lines or the amount of text? Because for me, that's like 6 points that are kind of one line each. There's a part of that where I think you can structure it and it's okay. But if there's a problem with that's too much information for one slide. I don't know.
So
What would your thoughts on that be? I think if you take out those lines, it would be helpful, and if you split up the designs a bit differently. But then again, this also just becomes like an exercise in design as opposed to like constructing I suppose constructing a presentation is an exercise in design. Yeah, okay.
it is a bit, definitely the lines are very difficult to read. I wouldn't say the number of points is necessarily a problem, but I would say this is a bit too much text for a grade 11 class.
Yeah.
It is grade 11 students. They're not huge, most of them are not huge fans of reading too much.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say the lines need to come out. It needs to be 7 points is fine, but it cannot go over 2 lines. So if you're having 7 points,
Yeah.
you can't have 15 lines or 18 lines, if that makes sense. So that first point would need to be condensed down to 1 line.
Yeah.
And then you would need a cleaner, much cleaner background with a visual element to make sure it's not just text.
Okay.
That help a bit.
Yeah, thank you.
So you favor text heavy. You don't
Yes.
necessarily need to go against that. Definitely not. Just try and have a look at it and see if you can just reduce the text a little bit. That's probably a good guideline for you. Not too much, just do you need to, instead of writing full sentences, do you need to write phrases?
Yeah, okay.
That will be absolutely fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the guidance.
No problem. Okay, I see, sorry, once again, I have gone over time. I do tend to do that. So I am going to say thank you so much for logging on. I hope you found this useful. If you have questions, please email me. I am a bit snowed under, but I am trying to get to all your emails as soon as I can. If you have questions, you're welcome to hang around. Otherwise, thank you very much and have a lovely evening, everyone.